So this video is going to be about the Elementalist Class Mod. The main thing that I am going to be, discussing here is whether or not you should ever use it. And my conclusion is no. And we'll get into kind of why in a second. So first of all, let's talk about what it is, and then we'll jump into what it does, and then we're going to compare it to something else that exists in the game and is a much cooler, better version, and then I'll discuss kind of where I would like it to go or what it kind of means for this class mod. So this is going to be a direct comparison between two class mods. Let's start off with the skills. Violent Tapestry, not super great, and I've noticed sometimes when I record, when I point at things, it's not pointing at the right thing in the video. So it's a little weird. Like right now, I'm pointing way down next to firmly grasp it, but in the video, it's recording weird. I think it's a Streamlabs problem. I'm not sure. So if you see me pointing at something, just listen to what I'm talking about primarily. So moving on from Violent Tapestry, we all know that that's not super great. It's okay in some builds. Infusion, we've already talked about how it's not super great. I'm planning on releasing like a little math video on why it's bad and how you can mitigate it, but at the same time, usually it's never worth taking in its current form. So if it's been buffed or changed since this video, just know that it used to be bad. And then we have Wildfire. This is okay. I think this class mod kind of needs to move away from the dot-centric theme, and I think that needs to go towards this other class mod. But let's go ahead and talk about what this class mod does specially. Whenever she grabs an enemy, her action skill element is applied to all nearby enemies. The range on this is pretty decent, but the damage is not great. So let's go ahead and look at my build. So my build is this. This is my dot build, by the way. I'm probably going to release a video on it at some point. But this is what I've been running with. I'm pretty happy with it. Notice it takes no capstones. I think builds like that are always kind of interesting, at least. Let's look at map modifiers just so you can see this Mayhem 3. There's nothing in here that's affecting Elemental. Also note that we are using the fire action skill element, and that is because I have an enemy coming at me right now that has a shield, and a shield allows me to test fire longer. So I won't rip through her shield instantly because it's not shock damage, and I'll be able to reapply my tests over and over and over again. So let's go ahead and get into it. I'm gonna pull out. So that's the mob. So I'm gonna lift her, and you're gonna see this dot tick for about 160. And we're going to see how much damage that deals to her. And notice this is a very paltry dot, but once it finishes proccing, we did about half of 1 bar. Not super great. Now, if we were matching shock, that would be a much more respectable amount. It would probably done half her health, or half her shield, I should say. Maybe a little bit more, actually, maybe about 3/4, but we're doing it with fire just so it's a little bit easier to test. So low 1-200 damage, and it got about half a bar off. So let's go ahead and talk about the other class mod that is better. And when I say better, it's pretty much better in every regard, and we'll discuss why it is. The class mod I'm talking about is the Nimbus. So the Nimbus, first of all, it affects Tempest, so that's already a huge boon over any of the other skills we saw in the other class mod. And I'm trying to be better about the pointing because I can see it in OBS being weird. Violent Tapestry does the same thing as the other one, so we'll just wash that fine. They're both kind of dead skills. I think Violent Tapestry makes more sense in Nimbus than it does in the other one. As well as Conflux. Now, I hate that Conflux is in here because right now it's sort of a dead skill. If they ever buff it, this will actually feel kind of nice. It'll be kind of nice if Conflux is ever actually useful. let's get into what this thing does. It creates whenever you first damage an enemy with her action skill. Now, this is weird. Normally, when it says first damage an enemy, it means that the skill actually has to deal damage. And that's true for like laid bare or some of the other interactions with skills or guns or whatever it is. With this, it isn't true. I can grab an enemy and it will apply the the Nimbus Cloud no matter what. And it has always done this. It's not a recent thing. So I don't know why the inconsistencies, but it is not working as worded. And that being said, I don't think it should be on damaging an enemy. I would imagine it should be on using your ability, because phase grab works so well with Nimbus. You lift an enemy up, it spawns a cloud, and they sit in the cloud. It just, phase grasp makes sense with this ability to begin with because you're locking them in the cloud zone. Note, the cloud damage is not great. It says 25 per second. And when we lift this enemy up, you're going to see small little ticks happening. And then you're going to see a giant tick. So Nimbus Cloud can actually proc a status effect. The status ratio on this thing is super high. Like, the base tick rate is low, but the dot is so much bigger. I don't know if that's a bug or not. I think they should leave Nimbus as is. I really think this is the more balanced version. I think they should change Elementalist. So, that being said, now that we know it procs a dot, we can already tell the dot is probably going to be stronger. Why? We have Tempest points. Now, if we look at Tempest, now that we have +3 points in it, it's going to be a much bigger elemental damage bonus, and it's an even bigger shock damage bonus. We're using fire, so we're really only going up a little bit. We're not going up an enormous amount because we're not getting the shock double dip on it. But it is a big jump from 30 to 48. So, I'm going to lift him. Notice the previous dot was doing 1 to 200, and we got a half bar of health. Let's go ahead and lift her up. Notice the 23 procs. Now we're procking for, what is that, 350? 350. Now let's let this thing finish, and we'll see how much damage we've dealt to her. So we did half of the shield health bar. That's probably around 4 times as much damage. And I know you're probably thinking, yes, the cloud does tick. So there is cloud tick damage in there, but I'll use it one more time so you can see. The clouds are ticking for like 20 damage. Now here is one dangerous thing. Nimbus is not a guaranteed dot proc. Notice she didn't get the dot until the very end of the Nimbus Cloud. Notice she only lost 1 health bar. Now, you can proc Nimbus on the very first tick, or you could proc it on the very last. Now, that being said, you want to proc it at the very beginning and have it reapplied the entire time, and then proc on the very last dot, or on the very last tick as well. That way you get a lot more damage over time on the enemy. That being said, I almost never see this not proc at all. So even if it procs at the very end, it's still going to be an increase in damage over Elementalist. Now, that being said, I'm going to go ahead and let her finish, being damaged, just so you can see again. Like, it's a little bit inconsistent with the actual amount dealt, but it'll never be less than Elementalist. So let's go ahead and take a peek back at Elementalist and see where maybe this thing should go, and maybe some ways they can fix it. So starting off, I don't think this collection of skills makes sense. I think Infusion is probably okay right here. Once they fix it, I think they and I've talked about how they should fix it, but I think they need to make it to where you can actually select multiple elements separately and have them applied to different guns, like different gun slots. However they choose to like fix this, I think Infusion will be a decent buff, and it makes sense for Elementalist. However, Violent Tapestry needs to be removed. It makes no sense for this. And they need to apply Tempest. They just do. Tempest is too strong of a buff. They need to have Tempest in here. They need to remove Wildfire, and they need to add something else. Now, that something else can actually be a couple different things. I would not recommend coming out of the orange tree again. I would definitely recommend coming out of here. So one of the things that you could do is you could do like an arms deal. Definitely don't do helping hands. That's too tanky of a skill, I would imagine. You could do one with nature. That makes a lot of sense for an elementalist, just thematically anyway. So you're going to get health and elemental damage resistance. So I feel like that one makes really good sense from the defensive perspective. That or arms deal kind of feels okay because a lot of elemental weapons are also splash, but I don't think arms deal intrinsically makes sense. I think one with nature really does. So for the third skill, I would do that one. Or you could do like restless if you really want to pump out action skills. I think they need to nerf some of the other action skill cooldown stuff. Restless just doesn't mean a whole lot unless you're not, abusing Phase Zerker and all this other stuff. So other builds that aren't using it aren't seeing as good of a return. Like you'll notice I actually have downtime when I'm using my action skill. And I prefer it that way. It makes it a little bit more balanced of an experience. I'm not just spamming. So in this tree, I would probably go with either Restless or Do Harm. But like I said, nothing from the orange tree for sure. I think one with nature makes sense the most. See, like, this is what I was saying with OBS. You can see I'm clearly selecting one with nature, but the cursor is over here next to fracture. So yeah, it's really weird how this thing is procking, or OBS is like recognizing my mouse. But that's all for the video. If I missed anything or I misrepresented something, I'm sorry. I'm still learning too. But yeah, leave a comment and help me get better too. Thanks.